Wyoming Territory, 1879, the wind howled over the red hills of Sweetwater County as the sun sank low, burning the sky orange. Blood still dried on her hands when Veronica Price stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a carpet bag and a heart too broken to show on her face. She did not speak to strangers, not anymore. The driver tipped his hat and muttered something about the next stop. Veronica nodded without looking up. Her boots hit the dirt like a promise she was done running, but she was not staying either. Not really. The town of Coleridge was small, barely clinging to the edge of the wild. A few saloons, a general store, a church that looked like it had seen better prayers. People stared. A woman alone, no husband, no ring, no explanation. She walked straight to the boarding house. "Room for a week," she said. Her voice was low, firm. The landlady asked no questions. That night she sat by the window staring at the hills. Her fingers traced the locket around her neck, worn thin at the edges. Inside it, a small sketch of two girls, Daniela and Daisy, her daughters, gone now, not dead, just gone. Abandoned, left in Kansas 3 years ago when she had no food, no money, and no choice. She had tried to go back. They were gone, no answers, no leads, just vanished into the cracks of a cruel world. She did not cry, not anymore. The next morning she walked to the post office, then the saloon. A paper tacked to the wall caught her eye, wanted men to drive cattle to Fort Bridger. 6 weeks, pay in gold, must ride, must shoot. She turned to leave, but a voice stopped her cold. "You looking to sign on?" the man said. His voice was low and rough, like gravel under tired boots. She turned slow. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with a sun-worn face and a worn hat pushed back on his brown hair. His eyes were clear, blue as mountain ice, but there was warmth in them too, the kind that made her gut twist with warning. "Just reading," she said. "You ride?" he asked. "I ride, you shoot, when I have to," he gave a short nod. "Name's Lawson Burke, foreman on the drive. We leave at dawn 2 days from now. If you are serious, come to the stockyard west of town." "I am not looking for trouble," she said. "You would not have come here if you were not looking for something," he replied. She did not answer. Just turned and walked off, but she showed up 2 days later. Lawson did not say much when she rode in on a borrowed gelding, her rifle strapped across her back. He just gave her a nod and made sure she had a bedroll tied to the supply wagon. The other men looked, whispered. A woman on a cattle drive was a thing, but they left her alone after the first night when she knocked one of them flat with the butt of her rifle for getting too close. Lawson said nothing, but the corner of his mouth twitched like he was holding something back. Approval, maybe. The days were long and the nights longer. Dust choked the air. Cattle bawled and stampeded at nothing. Rain came down cold and mean. Veronica did not speak unless she had to. She ate by the fire, cleaned her rifle, and kept her back to everyone. Lawson watched quietly, respectfully. One night, 3 weeks in, they camped near the river. Veronica sat alone again, staring into the flames. Lawson came over slow, not asking to sit, just did. "You always this quiet?" he asked. She shrugged. "Most folks talk more than this. Most folks are not worth talking to." He smiled, but it was tired. "That's so." She turned to him then, really looked. The lines around his eyes were deep. He could not have been older than 35, but he looked like he had been through more than most men twice his age. "Why do you care?" she asked. "I do not. Just figured you might want someone to talk to." "I do not." He nodded, stood. "All right then." She watched him walk away. That night she dreamed of her daughters. Daniela's laugh, Daisy's curls. She woke with tears on her cheeks and anger in her chest. At dawn, the cattle were restless. The sky was thick with storm. As they pushed on, thunder cracked overhead. Veronica rode near the back, watching the ridgeline, always watching. That is when she saw them. 2 riders, too far off to see well, but moving fast toward them. She shouted. Lawson rode up beside her, rifle already in his hand. "Trouble?" he asked. Coming from the south ridge, he looked. "You sure?" She nodded. The men circled the herd. Rifles came out. The 2 riders got close, then they broke off. Not bandits. Scouts, maybe, watching. That night, Lawson came to her again. "You have good eyes," he said. "I have good reasons to keep them open." He crouched. "You ever tell anyone what happened to you?" She stiffened. "No, you ever want to?" She looked at him. "Do you always ask questions that are not your business?" Only when I care, her jaw tightened. I do not trust strangers. He leaned back, arms resting over his knees. Then I guess I will have to stop being one, she stared at the fire. That is not how it works, Lawson's voice was steady. Maybe not, but you have not looked at anyone the way you looked at me just now. She blinked, looked away. Whatever you lost, he said, I am not trying to replace it. I just want to know who you are now. Why? Because I have not stopped thinking about you since that first day. She stood without a word, walked off into the dark, but she did not go far and he did not follow. The next night she sat beside him, no words, just silence. But it was a different kind of quiet, one that did not hurt. She did not know what to call the feeling in her chest, but it was warm. And it stayed. The trail bent westward into higher country, where the sagebrush thinned and the wind carried less dust but more bite. The herd moved slower there, hooves sinking into softer earth near the foothills. Nights came cold, and the stars stretched wider than Veronica had ever seen them, like the sky itself breathed easier out here. She rose early before the others, making coffee in silence and saddling her gelding without a word. Her hands were raw from reins and rope, but she never winced. She never asked for help, Lawson noticed. One morning, as dawn spilled pale light over the ridgeline, he stood beside her horse without warning. He didn't reach for the saddle or offer advice. He just held out a strip of cloth. Wrap your wrists, he said. Raw skin splits easy. She took it without a word. Their fingers brushed. Her breath caught, but she didn't let it show. By mid-morning, they rode out ahead of the herd to scout a narrow pass between two hills. The others stayed behind with the cattle, their voices fading into the wind. The pass had seen rain recently. Mud clung thick to the trail and rock slides had loosened the edge. Lawson dismounted to check the slope. Veronica stayed astride, watching the horizon. Trail's passable, he said, but we'll have to lead him through single file. She nodded, eyes still scanning the hills. You ever drive cattle through Ute land? He looked up, brushing dirt from his gloves. Not since spring. They charge tolls now. 1 steer per 100 head. They'll come for it. If they're nearby, they'll find us. You trust them. I trust that they want to avoid blood more than they want the herd. She studied his face. That a guess or something you've lived? He met her eyes without hesitation. It's what I know. They rode back in silence, but it wasn't the uneasy kind. Something had settled between them, wordless but steady. That night, Lawson brought out a fiddle as the men passed around beans and tin cups of coffee. He played slow, no showy notes, just a tune that sounded like long roads and lost homes. Veronica sat a little closer to the fire than usual. When he finished, the men clapped low and murmured thanks. Lawson set the fiddle down and looked her way. You play? He asked. She shook her head. My father did, before he started drinking more than he played. Was he good? He was better before he forgot why he started. Lawson didn't ask more. He sat quiet beside her, the fire painting his face gold at the edges. You ever think about settling? She asked. Used to, he said. Had a place once, near Cheyenne, small cabin half-built, never finished it. Why not? My brother died, got called north to bury him. By the time I came back, someone else had taken the land. She turned her cup in her hands. You didn't fight for it, he gave a small shake of his head. Didn't seem worth it anymore, her voice dropped. It's hard, isn't it? Letting go of something you thought was yours. Harder when it never really was. She didn't answer. The fire crackled. Someone laughed on the other side of camp. A coyote called out across the valley. Later, after most had turned in, she lingered near the embers. Lawson stood to leave, but paused. There's a stream about a mile west, he said. Clear water, good place to breathe. She didn't ask what he meant, but the next evening she rode there alone. He joined her just before sunset. They sat on the bank, watching the water run cold over smooth stone. She pulled her knees to her chest, boots damp from the edge. You always knew you'd end up out here, she asked. No. What did you want? He picked up a pebble, tossed it lightly into the stream. A barn, a porch. Somebody waiting on it, she glanced at him. You ever come close? Once, too young, she married someone steadier. Veronica looked back at the water. I had someone once. He left when the food ran out. Lawson didn't speak. He took my daughters to his sister's. Said he'd come back when he found work. He never did. Her voice steadied. By the time I found the town, they were gone. No one had names, just told me a wagon came through, took a dozen children. His eyes didn't leave her face. You still looking? Always. The sky turned violet above them. The first stars came out. I won't ask what you've done to survive, he said. Good, I'd lie anyway. He gave a quiet nod. But I see you. She looked at him then, really looked. The tired lines, the quiet steadiness. He wasn't trying to fix her. He wasn't trying to be anything but what he was. She stood. For a moment she didn't move. Then she reached out and touched his arm, not a promise. Not yet, but something had changed, and neither of them looked away. The herd crossed into higher elevation by the 4th week. Pines began to dot the ridges, and the air thinned enough that every breath felt earned. The cattle grew restless at night, their balls sharper, more anxious. Veronica kept her rifle close and her voice even. She didn't fret over the cold. She didn't complain when the wind cut through her coat. She simply did what needed doing. Lawson rode beside her more often now, not saying much unless there was a reason. She didn't mind his presence, not anymore. He gave her space, but not distance. That mattered more than she'd expected. One afternoon, as the herd followed a narrow game trail, they came across a downed pine. Its trunk snapped clean in a windstorm. The cattle balked. Lawson dismounted and studied the slope above. Could be more coming, he said. Veronica stepped closer. You want me riding up? I'd rather you stayed close to the herd. If something shifts, I'll need someone I trust down here. She looked at him, then nodded once. All right. The trail held, though it took 2 hours to move the herd past. By dusk, the men were worn thin, and the cattle were spooked by every crack of twig. The cook wagon lagged behind, Axel groaning under the weight of supplies. Veronica offered to ride rear guard while the others pushed ahead toward the next camp spot. She rode quiet, only the creak of leather and the occasional flick of her reins breaking the silence. When she reached camp, smoke already curled from the fire. Lawson stood near the edge, rolling up his sleeves and rubbing his palms together for warmth. I was starting to think you'd found a better trail, he said, just made sure the wagon kept moving. He stepped aside to let her pass. You've got a way of steadying things. Even when they don't want steadying. Most things do better when they know someone's watching. He didn't reply to that, but the look he gave her lingered until she felt it somewhere deep in her ribs. Later that night, after supper had burned down to embers, Lawson handed her a tin cup of coffee. She took it, their fingers brushing again. This time, neither of them pulled away. You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't riding cattle or watching ridgelines? He asked. I used to, she said quietly. Now I don't let myself. Why? Because wanting something you can't have is worse than not wanting anything at all. He sat beside her, knees close but not touching. I think you still want something. She didn't answer. Instead, she set the cup down and folded her hands in her lap. My youngest used to braid my hair while I read to her, she said at last. She had this habit of humming the same tune over and over until it got stuck in your head for days. Lawson didn't move. I'd give anything to hear that humming again. Even if it meant never sleeping in peace. The fire snapped. Somewhere out in the dark, a cow lowed softly. I never had a family of my own, Lawson said. Just me and my brother until he passed. I thought maybe I wasn't meant for it, but lately, he trailed off. She turned to look at him, her face unreadable. What changed lately? You, she stood then, sudden but not harsh. Her voice was low, tight. I'm not someone you build a life with, Lawson. I don't have land, I don't have people, I don't even have my name on a deed. All I've got is a past I don't speak of and a weight I can't lay down. He rose slowly, brushing dust from the front of his coat. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, he said, but you're wrong about one thing. She met his gaze, arms crossed. You're someone a man could build a life with because you know what it costs and you'd never waste it. She turned away, jaw set. But her shoulders had lost some of their tension. In the days that followed, she found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, not in fear, not in suspicion, but in something quieter, something she wasn't ready to name. On the 5th evening, they reached a wide meadow rimmed with cottonwoods. The cattle calmed as if the earth itself had softened. Veronica helped set up camp, her sleeves rolled, hands calloused but steady. As she walked past the fire, Lawson caught her wrist gently. I want to show you something tomorrow, before sunrise, she studied him. Where? You'll see. She hesitated, then nodded once. The next morning, she followed him up a narrow trail that wound through the trees. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon, and the air was sharp with frost. They climbed in silence until the path opened to a bluff that overlooked the valley below. Mist clung to the ground, and the herd looked small from up high, like scattered pieces of a map she hadn't known she'd been following. Lawson took off his hat and held it in one hand. I came here once, years ago, after I lost my brother, she said nothing, waiting. I remembered this place when we crossed into the hills. Thought maybe it was time I stopped coming here alone. She stepped beside him, the morning light brushing the edge of her face. Why me? She asked, not looking at him. Because you don't pretend, he said. You carry what's real. She closed her eyes for a breath, then opened them again. I haven't let anyone in for a long time. I'm not asking you to let me in, he said. Just don't keep me out. She turned to him. I don't know how to be with someone anymore. You don't have to know. You just have to want to try. She looked at the valley below, then back at him. I do. He didn't move toward her. He just stayed where he was, steady, waiting. And then she stepped to him, closing the space between them, resting her forehead lightly against his chest. His hand came to her back, slow and certain. For the first time in years, Veronica Price let herself lean into someone. And for the first time in his life, Lawson Burke held someone who didn't need saving, just saw him clearly and stayed. The drive neared its final stretch. The air thinned more with each mile, and the trees gave way to open land mottled with stone and short grass. Fort Bridger lay less than a week ahead, and the men rode with a quiet edge, their minds already looking past the trail to coin in hand and a bed under a roof. Veronica didn't speak of what had passed on the ridge, nor did Lawson press her to, but something had shifted between them, subtle, steady. They rode side by side when they could, and when their eyes met, there was no question left in them. One afternoon, a rider approached from the west. He was young, dust-covered, and rode hard without easing his mount, breathless when he reined in near Lawson. There's been trouble, the rider said. A wagon train down near Bear Creek. They were headed to the fort. Got hit 2 nights ago. Lawson pulled his hat low against the sun. How bad? Don't know. My brothers with the scouts said they're asking for help moving the wounded. Lawson turned to the men, voice clear. We'll split off 5 hands and ride there. The rest stay with the herd and move slow. We'll catch up by the foothills. He looked to Veronica. You coming? She was already tightening her cinch. Not leaving you to ride into that mess alone. They rode hard, the trail rough and narrow. Veronica said little, her eyes scanning the land ahead. The wind carried the faint scent of ash. When they reached Bear Creek, the damage came into view. 2 wagons burned out to their frames, canvas scorched black, the earth around them rutted by hooves and boots. A half-collapsed lean-to had been propped near the water, and under it, a woman sobbed quietly while someone stitched her arm. Lawson dismounted and approached the scouts. Veronica walked past him, heading for the wounded. She didn't wait for permission. She knelt beside a boy no older than 8, his leg wrapped in bloodied cloth, his face pale. What's his name? She asked the woman beside him. Illy, the woman rasped. He's mine. Veronica unwrapped the bandage carefully. This needs boiling. Where's your firewood? The woman pointed. Veronica didn't hesitate. She moved from task to task, boiling water, tearing clean cloth, coaxing the boy to sip from a tin cup. Her hands never shook. Later, as the sun dipped low and the wounded slept, Lawson found her rinsing her hands in the creek. The red had washed away, but her face held a stillness he hadn't seen before. You knew what to do, he said. I worked in a doctor's tent during the war. Only place that'd feed me. He crouched beside her. You saved that boy's leg. She shook her head. Not yet. He touched the edge of her sleeve. You carry so much alone. She looked up then, her voice low. I had to. No one else was going to. You don't have to anymore. Her eyes searched his. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. That night they slept among the wounded, bedrolls stretched near the fire. Veronica lay awake long after the others had turned in. The stars above were sharp and cold, and for the first time in years, her heart didn't feel like it was braced against the world. When dawn came, they helped load the wagons. 2 of the wounded would ride with the cattle drive to the fort. Veronica checked Ellie's leg once more, tightening the splint with gentle hands. "He's strong," she told the mother. "He'll walk again." The woman gripped her fingers. "Don't know how to thank you. You don't have to." Lawson waited near the horses. As Veronica approached, he held the reins out to her. "You ever think what comes after the fort?" he asked. "I'll need work. I've got some land near Laramie, dry but good for horses. I've been building it up. Could use someone who knows how to keep things alive." She took the reins slowly. "That a job offer? It's a start." She studied him a moment. "And if I say yes, then I'll build a second room." She stared at the horizon. The trail ahead was clear, the herd already moving. "I don't know how to be with someone," she said. "You don't have to know. You just have to stay." She swung into the saddle beside him. "Then lead on, cowboy." He smiled, not wide, not fast, just quiet and sure, and this time she smiled back. The herd reached Fort Bridger under a swath of gray sky, the wind sharp with the edge of winter. Snow hadn't come yet, but it hung in the clouds, waiting. The cattle were delivered without fuss, driven into the holding pens while the pay was counted in a quiet storeroom that smelled of old wood and tobacco. Lawson handed each man his share, steady and fair. No one argued. Veronica took her coin without comment, tucking it into a small pouch she hadn't let out of her sight since Kansas. That evening, the bunkhouse was loud with relief. Men drank and laughed, voices rough but light. Veronica stayed at the edge of the room, hands folded around a cup of tepid coffee. Lawson found her there. "They've earned it," he said. "They have," she answered, eyes following a man who stumbled past, singing off key. "You don't want to stay the night. Walls feel tight lately." He nodded. "Come with me," she said, and he didn't ask where. They rode out past the edge of the fort, where the land opened again into quiet. She led him along a narrow trail that wound between low hills, the horses stepping sure over frost-hardened ground. When they reached a rise that overlooked the wide basin to the north, she dismounted and walked to the edge. "I stopped here once," she said, "on the way west, looking for the girls." He stayed a step behind her, listening. "There was a woman at a mission house in Laramie. She said a wagon with children passed through the summer before last. Headed for Idaho, she thought." Lawson's voice was even. "You believe her?" "I do." She remembered Daisy's red ribbon. She pulled something from her coat, a small square of folded paper. She passed it to him. A crude map, hand-drawn, a route marked in charcoal. Beside it, a name, Sister Agnes. "I sent a letter," Veronica said, "to every mission between here and the Snake River. One wrote back last week before we left Coleridge. They have 2 girls, no names given. But one hums." Lawson looked at the paper, then at her. "You're going?" She gave a slow nod. "Soon. I'll need a wagon. Supplies might take me until spring to reach them." He handed the map back. "You won't ride alone." Her mouth parted, but no sound came. "I'm not asking," he said. "I'm coming with you." She lowered her eyes. "It's not the kind of life most men want." He stepped closer. "I've had the other kind, didn't suit me." She looked up again, and this time her gaze didn't waver. "This won't be easy. I know. There'll be days with nothing but wind and silence. I've had worse." She reached for his hand, fingers cool against his palm. "And after we build something," he said, "wherever we are." They rode back in the dark, the moon rising behind them. The next days passed in preparation. Veronica sold her gelding and bought a draft mare better suited to the weight of a wagon. Lawson bartered for canvas and axle grease. The fort's blacksmith helped them fit a second-hand frame with new iron rims. They slept in a borrowed loft, warm under wool and straw. She woke once in the night with her face tucked against his chest. "I didn't think I'd ever have this," she whispered. "You do now." They left Fort Bridger before the first snow. The wagon moved slow but steady, and they followed the old trapping roads north, stopping at way stations, gathering word where they could. At a small church near Soda Springs, a priest handed her a letter with a seal she recognized. Sister Agnes confirmed it. 2 girls. One with dark curls and a quiet way about her. The other with a voice that never stopped humming. When they arrived at the mission outside Salmon, Idaho, in early March, the thaw had begun. Veronica stepped down from the wagon with her knees trembling. Lawson took her hand, grounding her. Inside, the girls sat on a bench near the stove, their boots swinging above the floor. Daisy saw her first. She stared still, then rose slow as breath. Veronica knelt, arms open. Neither child said a word. They didn't need to. Daniela came next, smaller than she remembered, but with the same sharp chin. She pressed her face into Veronica's shoulder, silent tears soaking the collar of her coat. That night they sat in the wagon beneath a sky full of stars. The girls slept curled together under a worn quilt. Veronica leaned back against Lawson's chest, her cheek resting where his heartbeat was strongest. "They're mine," she whispered. "They always were." And now he kissed her temple. "Now they're ours." That spring they settled 10 miles outside Laramie on a patch of land that Lawson had once walked away from. The cabin was small, but the roof held firm. He built a porch with his own hands. Veronica planted a garden where the girls helped water the beans every morning. Daisy sang while she worked. Daniela took to carving animals from spare wood, leaving them on the windowsill. Veronica taught them to read by lamplight each night, her voice low and even as Lawson whittled by the hearth. Some nights, when the wind blew soft and the fire crackled low, she'd rest her head against Lawson's shoulder and close her eyes. She no longer woke with her fists clenched. She no longer ran. He kept his promise. And she stayed.